We continue our Congress Palooza tonight as we analyze yesterday's Durham testimony. A couple of things continue to stick out to us, especially this exchange. It started with a question from Congressman Kevin Kiley about Adam Schiff's preposterous statements during the Russian collusion investigation. Watch.
In 2017-2018 made statements such as, the Russians offered help, the campaign accepted help, the Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help, and that is pretty damning. He also said there's clear evidence on the issue of collusion. He said, I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. Mr. Durham,
Will the gentleman yield?
Are those statements supported by the conclusions of the Mueller report?
Will the gentleman yield?
No. Mr. Durham, are those statements supported by the Mueller report?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, hell no, I won't yield. I'm Kevin Kiley. Well, let's bring in the unyielding Congressman Kiley, a freshman who's making some noise up there on Capitol Hill. Thanks for joining us, Congressman.
Yeah, of course. Great to be with you, as always.
You went on to bring up some statements that Congressman Nadler, the ranking member, had made. Congressman, you have various Democrats who, for 5 years, they were all over my television telling me that the walls were closing in on President Trump. None of them were supported by the facts and by the actual investigation that Mr. Durham said. What conclusion can you reach here? Were your new colleagues here lying at the time? Were they misled?
Well, I didn't, pick those people at random, and those very individuals, Mr. Liu, Mr. Swalwell, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Nadler, they were there at the Durham hearing yesterday, and they were still at it. They were attacking Durham. They called his investigation unethical. Ted Luce called him a partisan hack, all in an attempt to somehow, continue this false narrative, which has been discredited on so many levels. This narrative of Russian collusion. I mean, it's been discredited by Mueller, it's been discredited by Durham, and yet they continue to somehow, Adam Schiff yesterday, they kept yielding him time. So he had 6 rounds of questioning or something like that. Yeah. He's still trying to find this elusive phantom collusion, hoping that, 5 years and however many investigations and then 5 rounds of questioning later, that'll be the moment that he finally stumbles upon it. Yeah. So it is, that's why I read back those statements, is that it was very clear why they were attacking Durham, is that these are the individuals who used their positions of power, their positions in the public eye, to propagate this false narrative that caused so much damage to our country.
Well, and Congressman, those same congressmen get continuously invited onto cable news. Adam Schiff is running for Senate in your state right now. You would think that the journalists, the reporters who care about the truth, or so they tell us, they would do exactly what you did. Hey, Congressman Schiff, before we talk about your run for Senate, when we had you on a few years ago, you said these things and we know it's a lie now. Can you explain that? But they don't.
That's right. There hasn't been the level of accountability that's needed, which is why, by the way, the Durham report was commissioned in the first place, is that we had this, unprecedented, really, sequence of events where you had the administration, the prior administration spying on a presidential campaign. And then you had the Mueller investigation, which cast a cloud over the Trump administration for a long time. We had a midterm election in 2018 with that cloud hanging over the administration. And so the Durham report was saying, how did this happen? And the answer is that there was a political origin to it all. There was bias within the FBI among certain people and DOJ. There was a reliance on information provided by political opponents of the president. There was, and then they used this to create an investigation, which then became this cudgel to continue to hit the president with and to try to stall his agenda. And so that's what we mean by the weaponization of the federal government.
Right.
Is you had a political origin to the investigation, and then the investigation itself was used for political purposes.
So, Congressman, your colleague Matt Gaetz, he sort of stood out yesterday by actually challenging Mr. Durham. He compared his investigation to the Washington Generals, the fake team that would play against the Harlem Globetrotters. Their real job was to make it look like they were trying to win the game, but they weren't really. They were in on it. Most Americans are looking at this, or at least a lot of Americans are looking at this, Congressman. They're seeing, as you just said, that the Justice Department and the FBI were used as a political weapon for one political party against the other. And it's true, the facts are there, and yet no repercussions. I mean, isn't this stuff against the law? And if it is, why can't we see some justice?
Well, I know that there are some who wish that the special counsel had gone further. that wished that others' prosecutions had been brought, or perhaps other people had been interviewed or subpoenaed. And I think that there is certainly room for reasonable people to disagree and for criticism in that respect. But the fact is, what we have, and just looking within the four corners of the report, is truly disturbing. In fact, Special Counsel Durham called it sobering, what he discovered. And so when we talk about accountability, at the end of the day, the real accountability that's needed is reforms to the way that our institutions work and removal from positions of power of those political figures who were responsible for this happening in the first place.
What's the next step here? I mean, I think it was great that Chairman Jordan had this hearing. It went on much longer than it was originally scheduled. I think Mr. Durham is a pretty impressive figure. He had a grasp of the facts of this case that, boy, certainly Robert Mueller's testimony after his special counsel investigation pales in comparison to Mr. Durham's ability. Does it end here?
Well, no, of course not, because Mr. Durham himself recognized the need for reform, and so that's now our purview as the Judiciary Committee, is to look at how this was allowed to happen, how we had people in positions of authority in our law enforcement agencies who like Schruck, who Agent Schruck, Special Agent Schruck, who manifested overt political bias, and how our systems failed to appropriately insulate investigations from that sort of bias, how it is that we allowed an American citizen to be spied on based on false allegations. So all of that is going to be what we're looking at as a committee here over the course of the coming months.
If I could ask you, Congressman Kiley, as you've been here in D.C. for about 6 months, so this doesn't pertain directly to you. I do think you have a bright political future. But there is an open Senate seat coming up in your state. As I mentioned, Congressman Schiff and a couple of other Democrats in the House are running for that Senate seat. So far, none of your colleagues from the Republican side of the equation in California have announced that they might run. And there's some pretty good Republicans. You got Tom McClintock, you got Darrell Issa, you got Kevin McCarthy. Do you think that one of your colleagues needs to step up and announce their candidacy? Because I know California is California, but boy, oh boy, if Adam Schiff ends up as the nominee or Barbara Lee, I think that there's a real chance for a Republican to make a case.
Well, sure, we need to have a strong nominee, no question about that. And I've heard some names thrown about of people who are considering stepping up.
Issa could fund it himself, let's face it. I mean, he's got that car alarm money. Let's go.
Sure, and I think we have a number of people in our delegation who would do great in that role. But the reality is that there's 12 of us Republicans from California, and it's incredibly important that we keep those 12 seats because the majority is in many ways going to run through California and New York, perhaps. And so there would be some cost to someone giving up their seat in the House in order to pursue some other office.
Oh, I see. So who do you think will emerge? Do you think that it might be maybe a self-funded? We keep seeing these Californians who have a big bankroll and they think that they can run statewide. It doesn't always work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard some names. There's a former baseball player for the Dodgers who's been talking about it. So we'll see what happens. I do hope, and I'm confident that we'll get someone on the ballot who stands up for Republican principles and who hopefully voters can rally around.
I heard somebody say that Schwarzenegger might run, and I asked which party.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
All right, good. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Congressman Kevin Kiley, thank you for your great work on the Judiciary Committee. This is a very exciting time for you to be there, and I'm glad your voice is being heard. And thanks for joining us tonight.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
It's Congressman Kevin Kiley from California. Senator Schwarzenegger. He can't run for president because he wasn't born here, but he could be senator if he wanted. He's not doing anything else. Doing a Netflix documentary. Come on, step up, Arnold, and be a Republican, a real Republican. There's more to come here on O'Connor tonight. Keep it here. You're watching the Salem News Channel.